All right. In today's episode, we have Roger Ver. Now, he is a very, very, very well known early adopter in Bitcoin, cryptocurrency investor. He's also the owner of Bitcoin.com, which we'll get to a little bit more here soon, and someone that I really admire his internationalization types of philosophies on freedom and sovereignty. So I'm very excited to talk to him here today. Make sure you hit the like button on this video to send this out into the YouTube universe so more people see us. Give us a comment down below that says Roger Rules right there down below. We'll put the link to all of Roger's websites right there down below. Last but not least, just a shout out to our channel sponsor, which is Vizsla Silver. So thank you for being our mining stock sponsor, Vizsla Silver. And it's good to finally meet you, Roger.
You as well, Jake.
Okay, so what's the story behind owning Bitcoin.com? Just for people that aren't aware, being an online entrepreneur myself, I'm aware that website domains are very similar to real estate. I mean, it's digital real estate in the truest sense of the word. And cryptocurrency obviously has grown and grown and grown in its buzz. Therefore, I would imagine Bitcoin.com has got to be one of the highest valued website price tags in the world. And normally those are reserved for the big elites bought that, the bank system bought it, some big media company bought it. And you have that. And I'm very fascinated with the story behind that because it's very interesting to me. What's the background and the story behind how that all happened?
Yeah, I guess that just kind of shows that cryptocurrency in general, it's not some movement from the big corporations or the elites or anything like that. It was a grassroots movement of peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world. And so all sorts of people wound up with these domain names that were just, some guy that was interested in the technology and the ways in which it can benefit the world. So long story short is that I paid a bunch of Bitcoins for it. The slightly more detailed version of that is that I studied a bunch of economics as a young man. And if you look at it, money transmits the information about what every single person on the planet should be producing with what resources. And there's this fantastic essay, if I can recommend, it's called I Pencil. And I don't know if you've ever read I Pencil, but it's the story of a pencil told from the point of view of a pencil. And it starts out by the pencil claiming there's not a single human being alive on the planet that knows how to make me the pencil, right? And at first that sounds crazy, like it's a pencil. It's so simple. Anybody can make a pencil. It's not hard at all. How can anybody claim that there's not a single human being alive on the planet that knows how to make a pencil? But then it starts to go into detail and like, for example, in the pencil, you have to have wood from trees, and the wood is chopped down with chainsaws, and the chainsaws are made with like iron ore that's dug out of the ground somewhere else. And the chainsaws run on gasoline that's pumped out of oil from the Middle East. And then the oil has to go through a refinery, and there's big giant tanks that do the refining method for it. And then the gasoline is hauled on, tankers across the world, and then trucks, and then sold at a gas station. The gas station has to use all these things there. And then just for like the chainsaws and this and that, there's all this stuff that goes on. And then there's the yellow paint that goes on the outside of a pencil. Well, they dig something up out of the ground for the yellow dye, and then they mix it with some other chemicals. It's a factory here, and people over there collaborate together. And there's a whole bunch of work that goes into making the yellow paint on a pencil. And then they talk about the rubber eraser on the tip of a pencil, right? And there's rubber trees in Thailand, and then they mix that with some other chemicals from some factory, and then they dye it pink, and then they ship it over there to the pencil factory, and it goes on and on and on. All the little details of what goes into making something as simple as a pencil. And by the time you finish reading this essay, you realize, my God, they're right. There's not a single human being on the planet that knows how to make something as simple as a pencil, let alone something as amazing as an iPhone or the computer that I'm talking to you on. And so it's all these millions and then billions of people working together voluntarily, coming together to dig the oil out of the ground, or grow the rubber trees, or mine the graphite somewhere else, and build the chainsaws and the machinery to do it all. It's all these people all over the world working together to do that. But what enables them to all work together to do that without ever having met each other, most of the time without ever having communicated with each other at all, is money. And money is what transmits the information as to what all these things should be made out of. And so without money transmitting these price signals, you would know, should a pencil be made out of wood? Should it be made out of plastic? Should it be made out of gold or copper or tin? We have no idea what anything should be made out of if it weren't for the prices, and the money transmits those pricing signals. And so anytime anybody anywhere is blocking the flow of money, they're blocking the flow of that information as to what resources should be used to make what consumer goods that people want to use. So without those price signals and the money being able to flow around the world, everything gets distorted and things get made out of things that shouldn't have been made out of them, or the wrong things get made, or everything isn't run as efficiently as it would have otherwise been had the money been allowed to flow and transmit that information as to what people value and what people want and what people are able to do. And so when Bitcoin came along, it was like, oh my God, this is the best technology ever to allow this free flow of information in the terms of money and prices to allocate the resources around the world to provide the most things for the most number of people in the most efficient manner possible. So I couldn't help but get super excited about this and want to help this technology improve the entire planet for everybody. And so one of the things I did along that path was to buy Bitcoin.com and start building the tools and the software and the wallets to enable people to use Bitcoin or now Bitcoin Cash as peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, because it literally allows every single human being on the planet to cooperate with each other in a more efficient manner, making everybody's lives better off. So if you haven't read that essay called iPencil, or someone's made a great YouTube video out of it as well, really take a look at it. You'll just have your mind blown that there's not a single human being alive on the planet that knows how to make something as simple as a pencil.
Powerful. So what year did you buy that? What year did you acquire that? Bitcoin.
Let's see, that would have been in 2014, I believe.
And one of the things I find interesting is because I would think most people probably would have taken an offer by now. I would imagine, you've had a lot of interesting characters, that I would figure, especially now that there's been so much more adoption by bigger money and institutions. And so, first of all, that's interested me. And then it made me think, well, why hasn't he? And it's obviously because, you have a bigger vision and of where this can go and a bigger mission behind this. Could you talk a little bit about that? Why haven't you sold?
Yeah, the mission is to empower every single human being on the planet to have more control over their own money. And if they have more control over their own money, they can cooperate with everybody else to increase the rate of economic growth of the entire planet, which means we'll have, flying cars and life extinction technology and, superhuman intelligences sooner rather than later. And that's a good thing for everybody. So I'm really excited about those things. And yeah, I could sell, the domain name or the business for some more dollars or maybe some cryptocurrency, but that's not as exciting or interesting to me as using it as a lever to push the entire world and push all of humankind forward and in the right direction at a faster pace than it otherwise would have been going at.
So what's the most popular countries that visit Bitcoin.com?
I didn't pull up all the traffic data before our call here. So the US is probably number one, but there's a surprising amount of traffic also from South America and India and some other countries like that as well. But the US and Europe are probably the biggest markets, I would guess. But it's been a little bit since I looked at the exact data.
Very interesting. You're very interesting. So what would you say are the most important philosophies that have aided your success? Obviously, you've been very successful as a cryptocurrency investor. You've also been very successful as an online business owner and operator, software developer, and all the, the many legs of Bitcoin.com that you have. What would you say are the most important philosophies for you?
I think the things that really helped were the reading of these economics books when I was a young man. Economics in One Lesson is another fantastic book. It's, you can read it in an afternoon. It's not very long, but you will absolutely see the world more clearly and understand the world more clearly after having read that book. And if you want to be able to navigate within the world that we're living in, you have to understand it, right? And if you don't understand it, it's just like having, your eyes blindfolded and trying to hit a piñata. You're going to be much more effective at hitting that piñata if you take the blindfold off. And if you study economics, it's like taking the blindfold off, and you'll understand so much more about how the world works and how human interaction works, and the effectiveness of humans cooperating with each other, and how incredibly important the free flow of money and capital is. And anytime anybody's trying to block that, they're literally stifling human progress. And so anyhow, pick up some economics books and you'll be able to see the world more clearly. And once you can see the world more clearly, you'll be able to navigate it more effectively in business as well.
So speaking of stifling human progress, right? We've had, I forget the data, what is it? 20% of all US dollars were created in the last, 12, 18 months or so. Obviously incredible levels of debt, incredible levels of money printing, incredible levels of devaluation of currency that, rob many people blind and set us up for some larger, as you said, distortions in many ways, shape, or form. Where do you think we go from here as a planet, as a human species, as a world, especially after these lockdowns truly expedited this process by maybe a decade?
Yeah, and these lockdowns have just been absolutely one of the most destructive things in recent human history. Up there, you have to do some back of the envelope calculations, but maybe up there and close to destructiveness of something like World War II. I'm just absolutely incredibly destructive towards all of humankind all over the world. So if you're really concerned about the coronavirus, which is a real virus and people do die from it, feel free to self-isolate and stay at home and wash your hands and do whatever you want to do. But don't retard the entire world's rate of economic progress. And then for young people, you have effectively 0% chance of dying, right? You don't need to force all these young people to stay home and ruin their lives and ruin their ability to earn a living. This has just been absolutely incredibly destructive. And the part that's been the most frustrating is pretty much the entire world took part in it. Like it wasn't like there was one country that went crazy and the rest of the world was still okay. It was almost the entire world went crazy all at once, and there wasn't really anywhere that anybody could escape to, and it was really, really disappointing to see that happen. So where do we go to next? I think we need to do away with these centralized, one size fits all governmental institutions, and certainly ones that are locked to geographic areas. We really need to have people be able to decide what groups they want to be a part of and which ones they don't want to be a part of, and be able to switch easily between them. And so one example of that is citizenships and passports. But if you really think about it, I think that's kind of an outdated idea as well. Like you can have, if you're in the U.S., for example, you can have a contract with Verizon and you can have a Pacific Bell or AT&T or whatever the other one is. You can have like 5 different cell phone carriers and you can switch back and forth between them. Why shouldn't you be able to do that with nationalities or protection services or that sort of thing as well? So I think in the future we'll look back on the whole ideas of citizenships and it being involuntary and being forced upon you from the time you're born, and you have to ask for permission to stop being one citizen and this and that. I think we'll look back on that in the same sort of ways we look back on I don't know, where you couldn't leave the Catholic Church or something, or they'd burn you on the stake. It's just kind of craziness.
It's been bizarre to kind of see the layers on that peeled back. Some of my audience knows that I'm in the early stages of internationalizing myself. You've already done it. It gets very interesting once you see the many layers and the many cells that were kind of put in. And so I want to ask you a little bit about when you look at all of this. You said there's many people that have been, quite frankly, destroyed by this, by these lockdowns. And before this happened, 75% of people were living paycheck to paycheck in America. This was before this happened. And so I'm curious, because one of the things beyond just talking about investments or talking about macro, I want to do the best we can to empower, as many people as possible. And I'm curious, what do you think are the essential philosophies to create your own freedom right now, to create your own sovereignty, to create your own financial freedom? What are these things for the new age that you feel, that Roger feels are important?
Yeah, I think some of these ideas are kind of timeless. And it's been 25 years since I read this book, but it definitely had a big impact on my life. It was called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And that's by Harry Brown. And it's a fantastic book. And basically talks about like the world isn't free, but you just need to let yourself be free and find the areas in which you can do what you want and set up your life in a way in which things are working properly for you. And then don't worry so much about some of this other stuff. And so anyhow, a fantastic book on that exact subject that I think is still relevant today is called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And Harry Brown was really a fantastic thinker that had a big influence on myself as a young man as well.
Yeah.
And for those that don't know, he was a very successful investor. And then he was also the Libertarian presidential candidate in 1996 and 2000. It was just a very interesting thinker.
Yeah, powerful book. I love that myself. What would you say, in which ways it shaped you the most?
I don't know. I think I stopped trying to worry about the big picture, influencing the big picture directly on a macro level, and just providing to the world one single improved human unit myself, because myself and my own life is what I do have the most control over and can have the biggest effect on. And by having the biggest effect on myself and my own life that I possibly can, that's the biggest effect I can have on the world at large as well. And so I guess I kind of look at it that way. But again, it's been 25 years since I read the book, and maybe
So
it's
what
time
you're
to read
saying there
it.
is, and I did notice that's an important message of the book. So you're saying kind of instead of focusing on, oh my gosh, are we going through a currency reset and is this going to happen? Are they going to do central bank currencies? What's going to happen to fiat currencies? What's going to happen to society? You're just like, let me focus on creating the best version of myself. Let me focus on my own purpose. Let me focus on my own business, the things that I can control in my own freedom. That's what you're saying. It kind of redirected your attention.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then another book that also did that to some extent was and maybe this one's a bit outdated now, but maybe it would be an interesting historical reference, was The Age of Spiritual Machines by Ray Kurzweil. But he has a new book coming out. I think it's supposed to come out next year. And that one's probably going to be a good one as well. But basically, he talks about uh, artificial intelligence. Machines are going to surpass human intelligence here pretty darn quickly. And once that happens, it's kind of like the closest thing you can possibly have to getting to interact with God, or talk to God directly, right? So an example of why this is so incredibly powerful is, let's say, most humans, if they put enough time and effort into it, they can learn calculus, for example. But a dog brain, even if you gave a dog brain 1,000 years to learn calculus, the dog's brain simply is not capable of understanding calculus. And so soon we're going to have artificial intelligences that are, a whole level beyond the human brain. Just like a dog brain is never going to be capable of understanding calculus, there's certain problems that the human brain, even with 1,000 years, is never going to be able to understand or even comprehend what the problem is. But once we design these superhuman intelligences, those are going to be able to not only, recognize what the problem is, but hopefully solve those. And so it's a really, really, really big deal. So if you want to have the equivalent of a god effectively to be able to solve the world's problems, let's build some artificial intelligence and hope that it treats us kindly as well along the way. But I don't think it's a question of if that's going to happen. It's just how soon is that going to happen? And I'm just an eternal optimist as well. I feel that's going to be a really good thing for all of human civilization and the new superhuman intelligences that are going to be joining us on this planet here pretty quickly. So anything by Ray Kurzweil is pretty darn interesting stuff. And it really played a big role in me losing interest in political politics, because I realized, well, none of this political politics stuff is really going to be affected much by any individual person. And if you really want to know what, are free markets really better than centrally planned economies? Well, let's create a superhuman intelligence that can read every single, argument on the internet and every single book on the subject, and then ask this, superhuman intelligence that has an IQ of 1 billion what it thinks. And that's going to be a heck of a lot better than myself going and reading, a bunch of books and discussing with other people on the internet and making YouTube videos. Like, maybe my IQ is a little bit over 100. I'd rather ask something with an IQ of around 1 billion what the answers to these problems are. And I think there's a pretty decent chance within our lifetimes we'll have the opportunity to ask those questions of that superhuman intelligence. And that just kind of makes all this, electoral politics and was there cheating in the election and did this guy win or that, or who voted for this or election fraud that, like, it makes it all irrelevant when we're going to have something with an IQ of, over 1 billion on the planet with us pretty soon here. Okay. Or lots of different entities with IQs in that range.
Okay, so I like what you're saying here. I wrote that book down. I like what you're saying about how to be free in an unfree world and focusing on what we can control. It's something that I definitely know that I need to work more on. Now, I want to shift the subject over a little bit over to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. It was obviously.
If I can add one last thing, actually, on the previous topic, though, too, like one of the other really, really liberating things and you'll find this for yourself at some point if you renounce your U.S. citizenship, or for anybody else that's out there. Like, once I stopped having an American passport and stopped being an American, like, it was so fun. I got to stop caring about any of the electoral politics and infighting in the U.S. I can just look at it and say, glad that's not my problem. Glad I'm not part of that. It's just been so incredibly liberating to realize that none of that is my problem anymore at this point. And I really am thankful for that liberating feeling. So for anybody that's watching this, that's considering renouncing your U.S. citizenship or some other citizenship out there, it really is an incredibly liberating feeling not to have that anymore. Or when people ask me, who are you going to vote for, Trump or Biden? I say, neither. I'm not an American. I don't have anything to do with it. And it's just really a liberating feeling to be able to feel that way. So that's one thing that if you ever do renounce your U.S. citizenship, you'll be able to look forward to that wonderful feeling of freedom there.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because that's what I told my wife. I said, beyond the trajectory of where things are going, the toxicity of it entraps you in it. And I feel like, once I have that complete, I do feel like I'm going to have a lot more energy for myself, for my family, for what's important to me. And, it feels a little uncertain when you're in a country of 350 million people and most of them believe whatever whatever the most powerful figures tell them, and how that influences your freedom. Democracy, if there's 350 million people and they're all kind of playing by within the box, you can have some limits on having an unfree world. And thus why you talk about internationalization. I was going to go to that a little bit more later, but while we're on the subject, why don't you talk a little bit about that? So you renounced your U.S. citizenship. I've spoken briefly on this podcast about it. Sometimes people get mad at me for even mentioning it. And I am in the process of getting my second passports for my family, and in the process of doing the same thing as you. Although I do feel like I have some cognitive dissonance around it. And I'm wondering, what was your process like doing that? And what were the types of things you heard from folks when you did it? Why did you do it? And how has it influenced your life other than the ways that you just suggested?
Yeah, so I first considered it in 2003. And actually, I hired a firm to do all the research as to what it would take to get citizenship somewhere else. And so I was really, really young back in 2003. So it would have been, I don't know, maybe half my net worth or so at the time. So I didn't pull the trigger on it back then. But then a bit later, I finally did. And, I think it was Mark Twain said the biggest cure for racism is travel. And so when I was a really young man, I was one of those, only buy American products and, America first and America this, America hurrah and all this and that. And then the more economics I studied, the more I got cured of that. But then traveling to other places in the world, you realize that there's lots of people, there's lots of good places, there's lots of nice, wonderful people all over the world. And you can choose where you want to be on this planet, right? And then someday you'll be able to choose whether or not you want to even be on this planet at all, right? Maybe you'll be able to go to Mars or the moon or space stations here in the next 100 years or so. I think that sort of stuff is coming. So like, you can choose what sort of people you want to surround yourself with, or what sort of policies, or what sort of weather, or what sort of whatever else you want out there. And so if you're not sure, like if you were born in some small town and you've stayed there your whole life, get out there and see the world, right? It's a great big giant world out there. Go to Europe, go to South America, go to Asia, go to Africa, see the world out there. There's a great big giant world out there, and you never know. Maybe you'll like some of these other places better than where you were previously. So if just because you're used to something doesn't mean it's the best and only place in the world there. So go out there and see the world, I guess, is the best advice I have on that front. So, and you bundled like 5 questions into one there. I think I probably left a couple out. So maybe if you can.
So tell me what other benefits or impacts that it's had on your life.
Yeah, I think that the big impact is just I don't have to worry about anything that's happening in America anymore. And as someone who used to live in America, it just seemed like there was this constant infighting and uneasiness as to Republicans versus Democrats, and more government versus less government, and it just seemed to get worse year after year after year after year. And now, as an outsider, for someone who's not been living in the U.S. for more than 15 years now, and hasn't been an American for almost a decade now, it seems like from the outside looks like it's gotten even worse. And it just feels really wonderful to realize that not my problem, not my fight, not my responsibility. I can just be out here focusing on my own life and my own business, and improving myself to the best ability that I have, and not having to worry about, Trump versus Biden versus whoever else out there. It's not my problem. And it's wonderful for it to not be my problem. It's really a liberating feeling out there. And, people say, "Oh, did you see the debate?" And no, why would I watch the debate? I don't care about those people. They don't care about me. Why should I care about them? I'm focused on my own life.
Like that. The only mistake you made there is you said more government versus less government. Now it's more government versus more government together. There's no less in that equation anymore. So very interesting, very interesting. So let me bring the subject over to the guy that owns Bitcoin.com and back to Bitcoin. We had the move, quite substantially higher. There was a rather substantial but regular dip. Who is buying this dip in Bitcoin?
Anybody who wants to buy it. So actually, that was one thing I didn't get to touch on earlier, though, too. When you study economics, you like everybody just thinks, oh, the dollar is money in America and the euro is money in Europe, and the yuan is the money in China or whatever. But no, everything is competing as money everywhere all the time. So like even this like jar of cookies, like the cookies inside are competing with the US dollar or the yen or whatever else to be money. But these cookies aren't very good money. So nobody actually winds up using these cookies as money. And like, these other, this money here, it competes okay in Japan as money, but so is this, smart Wi-Fi plug is competing as money, but this isn't very good money. So nobody uses it as money. And so the things that just naturally wind up being useful as money are the ones that people wind up being using them as money. And so Bitcoin was a fantastic example of that early on. There was no law passed. There was no politician telling people to use Bitcoin as money. It was just because it worked naturally so amazingly well as money that people just automatically started using it as money. And so every single thing in the entire world is competing with every single other thing as money. And at the moment, the most useful ones are dollars and euros and yen and things like that. But that's changing with the advent of cryptocurrencies out there, right? So now all these different cryptocurrencies are getting to compete in that market there as well. So if you look out there, look at the ones that look like they will have the most usefulness as money, and those are going to be the ones that the most people start using as money. And so Bitcoin was the first one. But today, the thing that's called Bitcoin, I am not bullish on at all. To be honest, I think people that understand it or follow it closely, I think that they should be embarrassed to promote that sort of thing as money for the world because the user experience is so horrible. The privacy is horrible. The fees are, $5 to $50 per transaction. It's not very usable as money at this point. So I think there's plenty of other cryptocurrencies out there that are more usable as money. That's why I'm such a big fan of Bitcoin Cash, but also the different privacy coins, the Moneros, the Z coins, the Zanos, the Z Cashes. There's a bunch of them out there. And so look out there, look at the things that look like they're going to be the most useful for people. Well, the ones that are most useful are the ones that are going to be used the most. And if there's limited supply, as more and more people start to use them, the price will go up. So from an investor standpoint, I think that's something to take into consideration there as well.
Do you foresee countries that have been destroyed by whether it's inflation or it's debts or whether they got destroyed by lockdowns? Do you see countries that have a failing economic system or a failing currency system adopting in a more centralized isn't the word, but in a more formal position, adopting cryptocurrencies or things other than the yen, the dollar, the blah 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 as their staple means of interaction?
Maybe, but I don't think it's going to be from the top down. I think it'll be from the bottom up, and it'll just be like someone sees a parade coming down the street. The politician's going to get in front of the parade and pretend like they were leading it the whole time, but that wasn't actually the case. It was people naturally started using these cryptocurrencies as money, and then some politician somewhere is going to go and say, "Yeah, we are ordaining this as the official currency." It's like, well, it had pretty much already basically happened by the time you guys got around to ordaining it as your official something or other. So I see it playing out that way. It's just going to be a natural from the bottom up movement rather than from the top down.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, what do you think when you look at the world right now and you look at your own life right now? What do you think are the most important attributes or ways, rather, let me rephrase this. What are the most important ways to ensure your own sovereignty right now in a world where governments are getting seemingly more restrictive, and there seems to be more rules and more regulations, more censorship? How do you ensure your own sovereignty in this world?
Yeah, money doesn't buy you happiness, but it certainly gives you a lot more options. And it's nice to have those additional options. So if you can secure yourself financially, you're going to have a lot more options in the world towards, finding happiness for yourself and your family. So focus on a business, start your own business, figure out something that people in the world need, and figure out a way to give it to them and charge them for giving it to them. And that's going to be a fantastic way to not only help the world but help yourself. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that these businesses or businessmen, they become rich by giving other people something that they want more than those people value the money that they paid the businessman for whatever that product is. So find something that out there that people want and figure out a way to give it to them and charge them for doing so. And you'll be making their lives better and your life better as well. And so it's a win-win situation. And entrepreneurship is just really a fantastic tool to improve the lives of not only your own family, but everybody else that are your customers out there. It's really fun to be able to see that. So I invite everybody to become an entrepreneur, which is the exact opposite of what the government indoctrination camps called public schools try and teach people. They teach people to just be a cog in the machine. But I think the best way to have more freedom in an unfree world is to become an entrepreneur yourself and be your own boss.
Yeah, I firmly believe that. When you're saying that, it reminds me of a conversation I had with Rick Rule recently. If you don't know who he is, he's a very
I
successful,
know it is.
obviously. Yeah, right. So Rick believes that making money is actually a noble moralistic pursuit. And I kind of was reminded of it the way that you were talking. You what do you think about that?
He's exactly right. Yeah. So anytime anybody buys anything from anybody voluntarily, both people are better off after the trade. So let's say you go buy a new flat screen TV for, $500. It's because you value the TV more than you value the $500. But the person who sold you the TV values the $500 more than they value the TV. So you're richer, and the person that sold you the TV are both richer after the trade. Otherwise, the trade wouldn't have taken place. So anytime anybody buys or sells anything with anybody voluntarily, both people are richer after the trade. Otherwise, the trade wouldn't happen. And so the only time in which things aren't being traded voluntarily are with robbers and governments. Right? It's the exact same thing. You're not better off after a robber breaks into your house and steals your stuff. You don't feel better off, but you do feel better off after you buy a TV from somebody voluntarily. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bought the TV. That's why people are so upset over politicians and government stuff, is because it's not a voluntary trade, and most people don't feel that they're better off for a lot of the things that happen. Different people, and everybody's jockeying for position for their favorite government program to get some of the money and to take away money from the other government programs that they don't like, whether it's Planned Parenthood or the military or police or this or that. Everybody's fighting over everything. Well, the way to solve that is just make it all voluntary, right? If you want to pay for something, go ahead and pay for it. If you don't want to pay for it, don't pay for it, but don't use it. It's just that simple. And unfortunately, everybody's busy arguing over everything there. Well, let's just make it all voluntary, and the problem will be solved. The markets will find a way to give people the products and the services that they're willing to pay for, and the ones that people aren't willing to pay for. In my case, I'm not willing to pay for dropping bombs on people in foreign countries. Well, I think a lot of people don't want to pay for that, so there'll probably be a lot less bomb dropping people in foreign countries. But if there's people that need food to eat, I think myself and a lot of other people will be more than willing to chip in for that sort of thing. So maybe we'll see a lot more help for people that are actually in need, and a lot less bomb dropping going on around the world. And so that's the solution I would like to see, is make everything voluntary, right? Be pro-choice on everything, right? Not just abortion, pro-choice on everything. Allow anything that's peaceful and anything that's voluntarily agreed upon.
Powerful. So let me ask you to kind of wrap up here. You said a little bit ago about everyone, you believe everyone should become an entrepreneur. And, so I dropped out of college, like I told you, freshman year. And probably the biggest learning I've had was just starting a business for myself. And at first it was more informal. I was just, as I told you, selling my book out of the trunk of my car, basically. But this entrepreneurial journey, I feel more than anything, I feel like it's made me a better person. I feel like it's made me more responsible. I feel like it's also helped me a lot with communication skills, getting better at talking, getting better at listening. I've learned a lot about goals, resilience. I don't feel that anything has influenced me more as a whole through my 29 years on earth than, my 10 or so years as an entrepreneur. And I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
I think you put it very, very well there. When you're an entrepreneur, everything is your responsibility. And you realize just how important it is to be a responsible person and make sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and make sure your customers are happy with everything along the way. And it just makes you a more conscientious person in life in general, for not just things within your business, but things outside of your business as well. And you figure, you look at things and figure out, how can I achieve this in the most effective manner possible, with the best benefit for everybody involved possible. So becoming an entrepreneur is definitely a way to make yourself an improved human being. So give it a try, and if you don't succeed the first time, try and try again. And don't think that you have to start with some big giant company with millions of dollars invested right off the bat. So I started my first business that actually really started to take off. It started with about $1,000 of money that I had earned as a high school student, changing oil at an oil change place, and bought some computer parts for $1,000 and resold them for more. So you don't, and that wound up growing into a pretty substantial business at one point. So don't think you have to start big. Just start small and then grow it from there, and find something that's scalable that you can do over and over and over, and go for it. Don't. If you're afraid to try, though, you're guaranteed not to succeed, right? If you don't even try, there's no way you can ever reach success. So you have to try. Don't be afraid to give it a try. You have to try. If you don't, then you've already failed to achieve your goals.
Powerful. I'd love to kind of end in that way, because I think it's so important, especially when we're looking at the world right now. Whenever I have someone really interesting like yourself, whether it's Rick, whomever it is, I kind of always like to hear your thoughts on entrepreneurship and business, because I kind of think it's one of the most important self-defense that we have against governments, unless we totally internationalize like you. So why don't you let us know in a final summary, what would you say is the most important philosophy to your finances, to your business, that you can't live or do without?
I think it's voluntarism, right? All human interaction needs to be on a voluntary, consensual basis, or not at all. And that's voluntarism is the foundation of human civilization, right? So it's so incredibly important to deal with other human beings on a voluntary basis. The only people that don't deal with others on a voluntary basis are robbers, murderers, rapists, and governments, right? And so we all know that the robbers, murderers, and rapists are bad guys, because they're dealing with people on an involuntary basis. The same is true of governments, right? If it's not voluntary, it's not okay. And so that's what every single business everywhere in the world is dealing with their customers on a voluntary basis. The robbers, murderers, rapists, and governments are not dealing with people on a voluntary basis. So we need to minimize the amount of coercion and then minimize the amount of involuntary human interaction in the world, and maximize the amount of voluntary human interaction. And cryptocurrencies are the best tool the world has ever seen to do that, because they're effectively an account that can't be blocked, can't be frozen, can't be seized, can't be debased. And if any of your viewers are interested in giving that a try, if they send an email to me at free@bitcoin.com, I'll send them $5 in Bitcoin Cash to the first 100 people that email. You don't have to give your name. You don't have to give your email. You don't have to give your tax ID number. Just you can use a throwaway email address if you want as well. And just email free@bitcoin.com, and I'll send you $5 worth of Bitcoin Cash for free, just so you can see how amazing it is.
Awesome, Roger. So we're going to put also on top of that, we'll put Roger's website right there down below. If there's anything else you want where people can find you, feel free to let us know right now.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin.com is a great place to get started. If you're wondering why I'm so interested in Bitcoin Cash rather than Bitcoin, you can visit whybitcoincash.com as well. It's a fantastic website.
Awesome. I'll put the link to both of those right there down below. For everyone listening, make sure you hit the like button on this video right over there, or there, wherever you find it, to send this out into the YouTube universe so more people see this video. This channel has grown tremendously in just 13 short months, and that's because you've watched these videos, you left comments, you've hit the like button, you shared this with your friends, with your family. So I want to thank you for doing that. Thank you for watching this video. Give us a comment down below that says Roger Rules right there down below, and let us know the number one biggest takeaway you've learned from today's episode. And be sure to hit that subscribe and bell notification. I want to thank you very much for coming on, Roger. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Jake. That was fantastic.